Well, welcome everyone to our first Leadership Lounge of 2021. And wherever you're joining us, I hope you I hope you're having a good new year. It's wherever you are. We are doing things a little bit different this month. I have a new co-presenter. So I don't know if Laurence is there.
Yeah, hi.
Your face is coming eventually. Many of you in Europe will know Laurence and Lucas. They have been working in Lyon for a number of years now. They have two beautiful petits enfants, two little children, and it's really Laurence and Lucas are doing real street work, evangelism, kind of innovative work in the city. And so it's great to have her today to help interview our guest with us. But before we introduce the guest, Laurence, can you just introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us a bit about yourself, your family, and your ministry.
Yeah. So hello everybody, and I'm very glad to be with you today. And I hope you will understand my English with my lovely French pronunciation. So as Jonny said, we started YM in Lyon in France with my husband in 2009. And I'm a dancer, so we focus on evangelism and artistic expression to share the gospel everywhere we can go, in the streets, in prisons, in high schools. And last year, even before the COVID had started, we felt we needed to do a transition and to think in different ways. And so the topic of this month is entrepreneurship and thinking out of the box. So I'm really excited to hear more about that and to hear about our speaker today, because we think that in YM Lyon, we want to change the way we did until now and maybe transition from a way of functioning as a base to function more as a team into the spheres of the society. So yeah, that's a bit of me and my husband and our work in YM Lyon.
Okay, thanks, Laurence. So I just want to say a few things about the European Leadership Learning Community, which this is obviously part of. Many of you know about it, but I just want to give you a rundown of every month. We are trying to release a couple of articles, written articles. So this month, Runar Byberg has written one on what does it take to be an entrepreneur. Carl Tinian has written one on if we're lacking visionary leaders, what can we do about it? Every month we release 2 10-minute talks. They call them LDX talks, leadership development talks. This month, Andrei Derkach has written one on doing new things in new ways. He's a brilliant apostolic leader in Eastern Europe. And then Connie Taylor has written one on has done a 10-minute talk on how do we develop adaptability, ingenuity, and visionary thinking. So we just encourage you to look out for those. They're available sometimes on the Facebook group, but we really want people to be using the website because we have a whole catalog of everything that we've done, and the resources are growing there all the time. Next Wednesday, Miranda is going to be leading the drop-in discussion. So we really encourage you not just to watch that afterwards, but maybe join that discussion, and you get to kind of input into it with questions. And then the fourth week of the month, Belinda is going to be doing a kind of a roundup of the whole month and looking at the different resources that we've produced and some of what has been said. Of course, an important part of that month is the Leadership Lounge, which is where we introduce one leader, an experienced leader, who gets to kind of share their heart, share their background, but also some of their wisdom and experience in what they're doing in the spheres, in the cities, in YY ministry. So it's great to have Laurence here. He's going to help me interview today. And so, Laurence, why don't you take over here and introduce our guest?
Yeah. So I don't really know Joakim, but I heard about him by Tom Bloomer. He was doing a teaching last spring on pruning. and he gave the example of Joakim and his work in YM Oslo. And so I'm very excited to hear what he's going to share about us, because it was really the idea of thinking differently, thinking out of the box. So let me introduce him just a bit. So Joakim and his wife started YM Oslo in 2012. And they have 2012, and they have 4 children. Their vision is to train everyday disciples to really impact the city of Oslo. And I looked into their website, and I could see 2 keywords that were coming back again and again, and it's fellowship and discipleship. And so they have different work in YM Oslo, and we're going to talk more in details about it. They are engaged into Bible engagement, UniDTS, and discipleship houses. And they are also connected with churches and NGOs to really impact and transform the city. And it's called Move Oslo. So maybe Joakim, you can introduce you a bit more in details, and maybe you could start in summarizing your journey in YM for us.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you. It's great to be on the show. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, it's good. I'm a YM kid. I grew up in YM, and I'm actually now sitting in my father's office, and so I'm back where I started. So I grew up at Grimerud in just outside of Oslo, and was part of growing up on the YM base till I was 19. Then in my 20s I needed a little break from being in YM, doing different things. But first I did 3 years in Australia running DTSs, and then I had 5 years at university, and I became a history and religious teacher, and then I went and did my SBS in Musenberg, where I met my wife Elise, which is American. Then I had a couple of years out of YM working as a teacher before God called us to start a work in YM in 2012. And so since 2012 I've been leading together with my wife the work in Oslo, and in 2005 we started I work outside YM, which is called Move Oslo. So that's a very short summary. So I feel like pretty much I've been in YM my whole life, but a couple of years I've been doing a little bit of other stuff. So that's a little bit of the YM story for me, from my point of view. Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe you could share a bit more about what is a UniDTS and discipleship houses.
Yeah, so because maybe of my YM experience and growing up on the YM base, I love YM, but I maybe also seen I don't know if I should call it the weakness, but the downside of YM. And so when we started in Oslo, or I actually didn't want to start a YM work, but I felt God asked us to do it. So I said, God, I want to do it a bit different than what I've been seeing. And one of the things I've been seeing that has not worked so well in YM is that people have gone on DTSs and then come back, and the bridge between a DTS and normal life has been too big for a lot of people to handle. And so they start feeling bad because they're not able to have as many quiet times or long worship times reading the Bible. And then they're starting distancing themselves from their experience, maybe doubting what their experience was real. And they're sliding away from their faith and from church. And so I said, God, there must be a way we could disciple people in their everyday life. There must be a way to bridge discipleship in everyday life. So that's kind of been the thinking behind the UniDTS. And before I go into the details, I also want to say that I think in YM, growing up, the DNA of YM it's a lot of full-time missionary. So we say we want to train people in the spheres and be part of there, but I think you can't really produce other things than what you are yourself. And I think in many ways the DTS is set up to train people for full-time ministry and full-time service in YM. And so I think we need to think differently if we want the DTSs to produce people in the spheres, which I would call a lifestyle missionary. So that's a little bit of the backdrop of my thinking. And so the uni DTS, in a very, I can go into detail, but the point is like people are studying, and so we're adding the DTS in their everyday life. So we rented a big house in Oslo, little mansion, and then we use the mornings for quiet times and intercession and different kinds of things, and we're sending each other out and says, you're a missionary today, you're a lifestyle missionary, be a light wherever you are, if it's working or at your student place. And then Monday nights, it's fellowship dinner, and they go to the Bible night, which is part of our ministry in Oslo. And Thursday nights, they have small groups over dinner and outreach. And then we have 10 weekends where they do teaching from Thursday night or Friday night to Sunday. And then we've had different outreaches during their student breaks. So we're trying to infuse the DTS into a year of study. So, and yeah, so that's been that. And then discipleship houses. Sorry, I'm just using my phone here, so I have to correct it a couple of times. It's pretty much trying to find what's the core of what we want people to get out of the DTS. And then we've started the discipleship houses where we want people who already experienced this year of living in a uni DTS to bring some friends and live it out for the rest of their time when they're in Oslo. So it's 3 core values that you have to live as a family. So you buy food together, you make food together. It's not like this is mine, this is yours. You have to kind of live as a family, and then you have to have rhythms of prayer and worship and Bible together, and then you need to find a way to be a witness as a fellowship house. So invite people back in, have parties and different things. So that's a little bit, a couple of snapshot of some of the things we're doing.
Mm-hmm. Joakim, it sounds really exciting. It's you're definitely pioneering maybe a new way of doing YWAM. I'm just going to add a couple of questions that we didn't have here, because I feel like it would be good to kind of unpack a little bit more of what you're doing there. Is what you're doing something that can be replicated in other cities, or do you think it should be? Or
I definitely think you both can and it should be. I think what made me a little bit aware of this is one of my friends. He's running a think tank. He always likes to show a picture with 100 dots, and then if you take the 5 or 6 % who is Christian and you place them all in a corner, your influence is just a few dots around. But if you put them all around on the paper, you can almost reach everyone. And I think that's been something I've been thinking a lot about, hey, I want to, instead of being a tight base and you have very few people around that you're impacting, what about having a lot of people in a big network, like a big family in a city that are spread all around, and in that way we can impact many more. So I think I don't think every base should be like this. God has to lead us, but I definitely think this is a way to maybe be more influential or be able to reach more people. And it's also easier, I think, in a city to think a little bit more long-term, not very long-term, because a lot of people move out of the city after 5-10 years. But when people have done the uni DTS and they're part of a study program, they're normally there at least 5 more years or 4. And so you can keep that connection with those people, get them in a discipleship house. They can be part of the Bibleship training we have. So you're able to follow them up for more than just 6 months. And so I think that's a valuable thing. And I think in YWAM we are too short-term focused. That's at least my opinion.
Yeah.
And we need to think a little bit more long-term.
Yeah, but you're not planting a church at all? Everyone would be members of churches, or how is that?
Yeah. No, we're not planting church. And I've tried to be very clear on that. And that's also to do with our role as trying to get churches together. That's my other job, that I've started this organization or movement called Move Oslo. So I'm very clear with the other pastors. We're not competing with them. So try to be very clear with people in our network that, be part of a local church. This is not a local church. It's more of a, the discipleship houses is a way you live. You will live with anyone anyway. So this is a way you can have a home that is discipling you. And the Bible nights, it's just an addition to church life. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I remember.
No, we're not.
Okay. I remember a long time ago, a person I met was doing study on the growth of new churches in Ireland, and they found that all of them were pretty much started by people that met each other at university. And her research showed her that university is this very significant time. It seems like what you're doing could be very significant in kind of seeing new things grow out of discipleship houses or out of the ministry that you're doing over time. I guess I'd just be interested to know, how do you balance, like, do you want to multiply YWAM ministry, or do you just want to multiply ministry? Sometimes as YWAMers we struggle with where YWAM, we need to start a YWAM thing, and sometimes we need to just start something and as YWAMers, but it's, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I know, and I think it's been one of the hard things for me growing up in YWAM, is where does YWAM fit in the big picture as the church. So I don't have all the answers to that, but for me, I think it's been important that God didn't call me to start a YWAM work, He called me to be impact in the city and to build God's kingdom. And I think that's, for me, that's kind of the framework. I want to see God's kingdom grow in the city, and if it's best through YWAM, let's do it in YWAM. If not, it could be whatever else. So it's not so important for me to brand it YWAM. And the biggest work we have, which is the Bible night, I don't think everyone knows it's even a YWAM thing, because we don't put it very clearly. This is YWAM. It's called Bible night, and people go there because they like to be there. So I'm trying to keep the branding low and rather focus on what we want to do and what we want to see. And I think that's important too, especially working with a lot of pastors and other leaders. People are, are you trying to take over? You're trying to, build your own kingdom and get all the people to you. So I think it's been at least a good strategy in Oslo to really downplay the name of YWAM and rather invest and really make sure that we're kingdom builders. So
that's great.
Yeah,
that's great.
I don't know if that answered your question, but for me, it's YWAM or not, I don't really care that much. No.
Yeah. Sometimes I think people just need the permission to hear that. We're first of all kingdom builders, Christ followers, and YWAM is a vehicle to use for the kingdom. Yeah. Laurence?
Also, you said that.
Yeah,
go ahead.
No, I said I totally agree, and I think that in every organization or every church there's a temptation to focus too much on your own brand or your own thing, and I think that's something we have to die to. We're not called to make YWAM great, and God doesn't need YWAM, but it's a great tool. But it's just a tool in my for the growth, like anything else.
I think it's interesting to hear maybe a bit more about your work with the different churches, because when you connect with different leaders from different denomination, I guess from different generation, they have so many different opinions, and I don't know, I guess it's really challenging, and maybe you could share about what are the benefits from working together in unity with other people from different churches and organizations, and also the challenges that you're facing up with.
Yeah, the work I'm leading has nothing really to do with YWAM in itself. It's called Move Oslo. So I'm a YWAMer, and people know that. But I think there's no no one single church or a YWAM work who can change a big city. And so I think if we really want to see God's kingdom grow in the city, we need to work together and we need unity. And so for me, I basically only see good sides of it. And I think, so the work where I'm doing is part of connected with the big network called Movement Day, which is connected with 400 big cities around the world. And we're trying to, create unity movements in every big city in the world. And so I've been lucky and fortunate to be part of this network. And so what we've been trying to do in Oslo is that somebody needs to think about the big picture. I think biblical, from Paul's writing and all things, he's talking about the church in Rome, the church in Corinth. So there's many different local churches there, but God looks at it as one big church. And I think there's some people in every city who needs to wake up and think about the whole thing. And if the church in total doesn't grow in the city, then we can't be satisfied even if our local work grows. And so I think it's been extremely important to build a relationship from different churches and organization and get everyone involved. And I think if people feel an ownership of their city, then it's so much easier to cheer on each other and bless each other and pray and want each other to succeed. And I think competition, there's no point of competition, because if you look at it and you feel like, I want my city to grow, I want more people to get to know Jesus, I want more people to go to church, then you celebrate when there's a new church starting or new work or something is happening, instead of feeling like, oh, they're competing, they're taking my people. So I think that's been a key, at least for me and the ministry. And it's also helped me to know how to do the YWAM work, because if I'm focused on the whole city, I always have to ask myself, going back to your question, Jonny, is it best for the kingdom of God if YWAM starts this ministry, or is it best if a church started, or should we do it as a unified thing? And so I always try to think, I'm not here to grow YWAM, I'm here to grow the kingdom. And so I have to think, in what expression, what brand, how should we do this for the best of the city, for God's kingdom in the city? And I think if we all thought that, I think that would be in tremendous help. And I think we too often are in our silos. We're just like, I want to see this, and I want this little ministry to grow, but we're not having the big picture, how this is fit in the whole of the city. And so, for example, the discipleship houses, it's very popular, and we could have rented tons of different flats all around and fill them up. But I'm not sure if it's beneficial for Oslo that YWAM runs it. I think it could easily felt like a competition, and a lot of churches would felt threatened if we had 100, 200 flats. So I'm rather want the churches to rent their own places and get their students to move in and feel like, hey, I'm responsible. We're discipling these people. So that's one example where I'm like, we've been very hesitant to multiply that in a big scale, because I'm not sure if it's beneficial for Oslo that YWAM runs it. It's maybe better if the churches would do it. So that's a little bit of my thinking. But of course, it's always a little hard to get momentum when you're going to try to get a lot of people together, and especially when it comes to theology. Who can you work with? Who can't you work? And so the strategy we've had is like, instead of saying you're in or you're out, we're trying to say, this is what you want to do. If you're with us, then this is... the values we have, this is the thing. And so rather people can decide if they want to join or not. And it's not so much we are saying, you have good enough theology or not, or in this matter, it's too big of a difference. So we're trying to say, this is where we're going. This is what we're believing. If you want, you can join us, but this is the course. And I think that's been a good way, instead of have to decide every time, are you in or you're out.
Yeah. Laurence, have you got another question there?
Sorry, Jonny, I didn't understand what you were saying.
Oh, you have another question to ask?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask if the Bible engagement is in line with Move Oslo as well. Is it a ministry that is going in line with it, or is it two completely different things?
The Bible nights, that's that's a YWAM thing we started before I started the Unity movement. So, but I think it's part of helping unite Oslo, because people from almost every church is going there, and so yeah. So that's it. It's pretty much an SPS for people who don't have time to do an SPS. That's kind of the simple solution. We meet every Monday night, and we study book by book. We also started different programs and more in depth of a book and thematic work, and we also have outreaches. But in general, it's just to get a hunger for the young generation to study the Bible, and I think part of that's been a successful thing has also helped me in my role in the city to get some authority to be able to lead that work. It's not part of Move the Oslo. Move Oslo doesn't really do a lot of ministry itself. It's more of a platform where we bring leaders together to hear what the different churches and NGOs and other people are doing and trying to link and improve it. And then we're also trying to lift the agenda. Like now we're trying to end all foster care list in Oslo. There's 100 kids waiting for a home, and we're trying to mobilize the churches to end it. But Move Oslo itself is not doing it all by itself. It's more that we're inspiring and lifting an agenda and trying to get the churches to own it and the NGOs to own it and really do something about it.
Wow. Joakim, everything you're saying is really, really good. It makes so much sense, but it's interesting in that sometimes it is out of the box for us as YWAM, and we have maybe kind of focused a little bit. We've got our structure, we get a base, we get a school, and that's our model. And I think you are really showing us how we can take the best of YWAM, but also then innovate. The theme for this month is kind of entrepreneurship or thinking out of the box. So it's exactly what you're doing. How do you take the best of YWAM and come up with the vision that you need for your city? Can you kind of just share? I mean, this is more a leadership kind of principle. Like, what is that process like for you? I mean, there's maybe 20, 30, 40, 100 people listening who are leaders in cities and nations. And how is that process for you? Like, where did the vision come from? Is it driving along the road? Is it in prayer time? Is it step by step? Yeah.
Yeah. It's a good question, Jonny. I almost never get a great vision when I'm trying to get one. At least when I'm trying to listen to God and be still, I can only think about all the things I should do or haven't done. So for me, like, I remember the Unity test came while I was running in the rain, and then suddenly that thought dropped. I think most of my vision comes at night when I can't sleep and I'm frustrated, and I love to just go off in my brain and just think. And then when I wake up in the morning, I have it all in my head, and then it's just I've learned from my wife to let it go a little bit to see if it's actually a good idea or if it's just mine, like my own thinking. So I think for me, I've learned more and more to do that, to give it time. If it's God, it's a good thing. It's like a seed, sown to me. And if it keeps coming up and I think about it and I get excited, then after a while, I'll start put it in practice or into real life. So for me, it normally comes jogging, thinking about something else, but especially when I can't sleep and I'm frustrated, then I love to just go off in my mind and just figure out something new that makes me excited. So it's not very spiritual in that way, maybe, but that's how God is working me. And I always have, when I read books, when I watch television, something else, when I see something, I always think, how can I do this? Or how can we improve this? Or could this be done in a better way? So that's just how my brain works.
Okay.
But I think the hardest thing I've seen in Oslo is that okay, sorry.
No, go for it. Keep going.
Yeah, I'm a little. Yeah, but the hardest thing is it's so voices. There's so much stuff to do. I think to get something going and starting and keep going, you need some kind of, I don't, you know, it's not for everyone. I've seen that in Oslo. Some people have a dream, they started it, but they just can't get it off the feet. So I think I've learned it's important. Has God given you that gifting? And people just have that. They're able to get something up and start and running, and some doesn't. The time you really need somebody with the skill and something up and running.
Okay. Joakim, one of the questions we ask every week is, or every month during this interview, is we ask about mistake. So that I just asked about how you get great vision, but I guess with great vision, the other side is also we make mistakes, and the connection seems to be cutting in and out. I hope it's okay, but I wonder, we've lost. Did you hear what I said, Joakim?
No, my phone died, and so I had to go on my iPad. So I'm sorry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, it's good. We just were saying the question we ask every month is about mistakes we've made as leaders, and we just talked about your great vision and how do you get these great visions, but also with that often comes mistakes. Could you share a mistake that you think would be good for us to hear about? Sorry to ask.
Yeah, no, it's I keep doing mistakes all the time. So, but I just saw that question just before I went on, and I was thinking, is there one mistake I've done that really I could, learn or give some people an idea what to do? But I think for me, it's been a mistake I've kept doing a couple of times, is that I've handed over things too early. I've started something and I like new projects. I easily get bored with things to run it. And then I've been, there's a person who wants to join or wants to do it. And I've given it over with not having enough training or taking enough time if that person really can run it. And then sometimes, because it hasn't worked that well, I have to come back and take over the leadership. And that's never an easy thing. And it's not always easy for that other person too. So yeah, I think I'm much more careful to hand over something, leadership, to other people, and make sure they're trained properly, they have the giftings, that it's a good process, and to assess that takeover or handing over leadership. So I think I've failed a couple of times there, thinking that they're good, there's nice people, I just give it over, and then not being able to. They maybe didn't have the right gifting or the personality, or at least I didn't give them enough training or backing. So I'm much more careful to hand over leadership, and and like to have teams together and properly train them. And maybe one big thing I did a mistake is also one of the handing over of the DTS. The DTS leaders wanted me to be quite distant the first year so they could build their kind of leadership there, and people would look at them as leaders. So I respected that, so I wasn't much part of that year of the DTS, but I regretted that, and they regretted that, because it became quite a few difficult things. And when I finally, towards the end of the year, joined to help fix it, there was already some problems that it was unnecessary, and I could have helped sort it out long time before if I just was aware of it and part of it. And so I also think that I don't want to when I hand over something, I don't think it's healthy to just be totally off and not part of it. I think if people aren't willing to have me with them to help them and to discuss with them, then I don't think I'll be willing to give over leadership to people, because it has to do it's often a pride issue and insecurity that they don't want me around. So I think I've learned that lesson too, and that hurt some people. That was unnecessary. And if I'd been part and closer with those leaders, I could have avoided some situation, and it's all dealt with now. It's been asked for forgiveness, so it's not a big thing. But I'm just learning from that. If people ask me, "Hey, I need some distance," you're the leader. I need to have people to look at me as a leader. I'll be a little careful to give them that permission, because I think as the one who started something who's a little bit more mature, it's good to be there, because I'll pick up stuff that they maybe don't pick up because they don't have that same training or experience as a leader. So in general, it's a lot with this handing off of leadership. I've done some of my biggest mistakes there, I think. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing this, Joakim. I think it's always a challenge for us as leaders to know what is the good timing, and in delegating and between doing with people and then letting them do their own things too. It's always so many questions going on. I'd like to go back to the spheres of the society, because it's kind of a focus as a ministry into the city when you live in a big city such as Oslo. And here in Lyon, it's a big city as well. We are in with my husband, and we are really searching in new ways of impacting the different spheres. And YM is a lot into the sphere of the church, but it's been, even if we heard about the 7 spheres of the society many times, I think it's still something not really concrete to be able to be YMer into the sphere and remaining a YMer, if it makes sense, And like, for example, in YM Lyon, we had artists or people wanting to do business, and they kind of have to leave the base to be able to be involved into their sphere. And I think it's a shame, because we should be waves of YMers into the spheres while remaining in YM. So I don't know if you are facing that at all in your base, and if you would have some advices or inputs on this topic.
Yeah, I think it's always many things to do. There's not one right way or wrong way, but maybe an easy thing for us is that we don't have a base. So we've set up that people live on their own. We had one apartment block that we rented that there's quite a few Y members living, but so in one way, being a Y member in Oslo means basically just that you're part of a network. So we've tried to figure out, who should be part of this network, what is the family. So we've said that if you lead a work, or if you're using 20% of your time in YWAM, you're a YWAM staff. So that's kind of just our separation, because it has to do with some legal matters and insurance policy. But in general, we're trying to have it even broader. Like, if you're part of our group, you can always come on these and these gatherings. You're part of our family. And so I don't really want a lot of people to live on the base. I rather want people to live in their own apartment around and live there. But it is a hard thing. And I think this is the hardest thing we've been working at. It's like, you need enough time with people, or some points where you're meeting, to be able to disciple, to feel like you're a family. But if you're doing too much of that, you don't have time to be part of the society or with your friends and family and other people. So where is that balance, that tipping point in between? And I think that's been a really hard journey for us to find out, like, not having so much YWAM stuff going on, or meetings you have to join, that you basically are taking people away from the society. But there has to be enough that you actually have a way of influencing and keeping the DNA. We have, I don't think we have found like the answer, but we're trying to. We have an open meeting on Monday nights, except for now in COVID, and everyone can come to. And we're trying to use meals and different things for meetings and gatherings, things people would have to do anyway, to not steal their time for other engagement in society. So that's been a thinking we have been doing. How can we use those time that when you're doing something anyway, and fill that with a discipleship moment, or help them being part of the YWAM family. So that is strategy we're having, like using meals different things that they would use time on anyway. So we're not stealing away time. And actually on the DTS, this year it's not even called the DTS because we had to do some changes because we were feeling like I worked hard to be able to get it at DTS, and then we had it, and then school is getting more and more demanding that people have to be at school, and we're getting younger and younger students that maybe struggled a bit with this complex thing of busy schedule and being part of it. And so we were seeing like we're not so effective in our neighborhood in Oslo because all the attention goes into just fulfilling all the DTS requirements. So we just cut down to the bone this year. It says we want people who really want to be disciples and just be a house that really can be influential to the city. And the people we got this year they're really amazing. And so now we just call it a discipleship fellowship. And again, I think we have to dare to think like God never called me in a way to start a DTS or, most important, YWAM. He called me to influence the city. And so I think we have to be really obedient to God and say, hey, God, how can we be fruitful? And if that means that it's not called a DTS, then I'm not too worried about not having a DTS. Yeah. Because it's not about growing YWAM, it's about growing the kingdom of God. And so at least for myself, I always try to have that in my mind that I'm not building my own brand. I'm not building YWAM. Whatever is the most fruitful and we feel God is leading to, we'll do that. If we can call it whatever we can call it, we'll do it the way we think is the best way. Mm-hmm. And this is not a rebellion spirit or anything like that. It's just, we know what God has called us to, and we want to do that. And then we'll see if we'll make it back to DTS or we will add another DTS onto it. But I think we need to dare to try more stuff and fail and try out stuff and not just be doing the same stuff just because we've always done that. The world is changing and the cities are changing. It's different, and we need to adapt discipleship to what fits the society or the context we're in.
Yeah. Thank you. I remember Tom Bloomer, when he gave your example, he was saying that you won't be surprised and even maybe happy to see 500 bases in the world closing, which was really shocking for me. But he said, because we need to think on how YWAM could really influence cities, especially. And he was giving this example of like DTSs might be too demanding for ministry into the city, and maybe it's not the right strategy for all the bases in the world. And of course, we need discernment to see what God is saying to us in our base, But maybe, I don't know if you have an example of some staff who are in your team and or involved into the sphere, a specific sphere outside of the church. Maybe they run a business and how they influence the city,
Yeah. I should have been thinking a little bit more before but it depends a little bit what you call YWAM or not. I think there's a lot of people in the network. I think there's been probably 2,000 people through our Bible nights. So there's quite a few people. One of my friends has been part of the Bible night. You probably wouldn't call him a full-time, a full YWAMer because he hasn't done a DTS, but he's been part of our network. He's been part of starting something called Prospera, which is like getting professionals to help NGOs and to succeed. And that's been a very successful thing. He also started one of the top investment firms in Norway. And I've been lucky to be able to walk with him and disciple him, or not mentoring him, but being a friend and giving him some insights. And it's been really thinking, how can I lead in a biblical way? How can I add, the biblical values to what I'm doing? So I feel like I'm quite fortunate to have quite a few friends that I'm able to follow. They don't all of them have done a DTS, but they're in, and especially through the Bible night, we've been able to discuss or or leaning into each other, or just talk about how can we do this and how can we be able to really influence. So that's one. And then one of our former DTS leaders, they felt called to move back to their little place. It's not a city. It's actually 37 people living in this tiny village on the West Coast. And it's been fun to see how God, had them in the city context, really thinking about where we're all about changing a city. And then even though when we're talking a lot about rhythms and about these things, and they felt like calling to start a kind of a modern monastery on their farm, and they have got another family with them, and they're living the rhythms but in a little village. And it's fun to see how they're starting to get more and more connection with the little village, and they've been able to be in the news, on the national news, for their things, and getting a really broadcasted and influencing way about that little village for what they're doing. And so that's a fun little story too. But I have to think a little bit more. I'm sorry, I haven't thinking about it, but I probably can come up with other examples. But I'm a little slow now with 4 small kids. My brain doesn't work like it used to do.
That's okay. Thank you so much. It really helps to see clearer how you're working and your way of thinking too. So it really helps. Thank you.
Joakim, I wonder, could we just ask about the Bible nights? I mean, I think it's amazing to hear that you have maybe 600 people coming on an evening, or you've had 2,000 people involved. I mean, I think in YWAM all over the world, when we are successful, it's when we engage very well with our local cities and towns and get lots of people coming in. And then from there, they maybe go and do an outreach with us. Or, I mean, how did you get 600 people coming to every night? What was that process? Obviously, advertising and networking and connecting.
No, I think the short answer is God. I've never advertised less, worked less. It's been a little bit of a miracle. When we started YWAM, we didn't want to start YWAM. Okay, so my wife and I, we felt just compelled or tied and pushed by God to do this. And so I says, okay, God, I don't want to be a missionary in my own city. You couldn't even do it. How can I do that? And it just felt really weird to suddenly kind of go into like a mission movement from living there. But okay, says God, we'll do it. But I'm creative. I don't want to do things like we're always done. And so I asked God, how can we serve the city? And we felt we should do some mission trips for youth. So my wife started with that, and then I felt I should do this Bible thing. And so, but it's interesting how God works. So actually, I met with 2 other people who had the same vision, and they joined on board. And I didn't like Facebook or social media, so I wasn't on Facebook. But I realized that summer before we started that if YWAM should have a Facebook, I needed to have a Facebook. So I started. I had no friends, no likes. I didn't even know how it worked, and I just put up a thing. Hey, we're gonna have Bible night. Go through the Bible, join. And I thought, like, I have a big network. I'll drag 15 of my friends into a room because I think that it's good for them. And then after, I was in America that summer with my wife's family, and I came back and I looked on this event I'd posted on Facebook, and it said it was 70 people were coming or something, 60 or 70. I was like, what? I didn't even know who they were. And so I thought, they're probably not coming. It's just a Facebook thing. But we just had a room for 20. And so I was starting getting nervous, like the same day. I thought, what if 60 people show up? And so I desperate, found some friends, and we were able to get into a church, and 60, 70 people showed up. That was 2012, 8.5 years ago. And no advertising. I never talked to anyone about it, so I don't even know how people found out about it. And since then, it's just been growing every year to over 600. And the only thing we've done is to post an event. I'll put out, shoot a video, say, hey, the Bible is important. Join us. That's pretty much what we've done. And I never had an ether thing. Like, it's been a lot of hard work to do. I mean, to prepare teaching and stuff. And we've been diligent, but we prayed a lot. And we have had great leaders. They just come to us. We had people who moved to Oslo because of Bible night. So the reason they moved there is to join that. I have one of our top leaders is a doctor, and he's just a doctor on the side. His main thing is, I feel called to Bible nights. So he's just taking some shifts at an emergency place, and so it's been incredible. We have had some really, really committed people, and I think that's the key. We've had a stable leadership. It's been extremely committed and put a lot of effort and time and planning into it. But everything is simple, no fancy worship, nothing is fancy. But I think we'll be able to create good teaching and a good environment where people can, get friends. Some people are married after joining, found their spouses there. And I think it's just become a talk in Oslo that's a great place to be. And we've dared to really be challenging. And I think a lot of churches has a bit more sensitive, don't want to be careful. And I think there's been a big need for people who want to be more challenged. And I think a lot of people feel they should read the Bible, but they don't know how, and they feel it's difficult. And so I think that we found a way that it's more fun and enjoyable and interesting. And so I think almost every Christian feel like, I should pray more, I should read more of the Bible, and they have this bad conscience. And I think we've been able to, there's a way of them to get into this and actually do what they felt they should do, but they haven't been able to do on their own.
Can you tell us what you do in a Bible night? What is the format?
Yeah, we do worship half an hour for those who want to join from 6:30 to 7. And then we have some leadership meetings and prayer meetings before that. Then we do teaching from 7 to 9 with a break in between, 15 minutes. And then it's prayer time and worship for those who want to stay. And then it's food, kind of evening meal, and talking with each other about what's been the teaching or just other things afterwards. So normally to 10 o'clock. And then people go home. But recently we also started a Bible teaching teams because we want to equip more people to actually be Bible teachers, so we can serve Oslo and the greater Oslo area. So we've gotten a lot of requests for Bible teaching in churches and other places, and I can't do that all. So I'm trying to facilitate for people to multiply and get a lot of Bible teaching. And we also started with Bible outreaches now, so we're going to do summer teams and stuff. But then COVID-19 hit, so it hasn't been that easy to travel the last year.
Okay. Joakim, just there was a question came earlier about just the number of houses, how many in each house, and let's see, and how many altogether, like on a DTS, if you were running a DTS,
And the DTS would be in between 14 with staff to 25 on the most. Then we had to rent another apartment. That was a little bit too much because you kind of need to be one group. And when we were over 20, I felt it had to split to everyone. It wasn't that easy to hang out with everyone. So I think 12 to 18 is a good size for that type of DTS. It should feel like a family. That's one of our kind of goals. And then the discipleship houses is from 3 maybe to 5 on the most. And again, it's I think the more people you have in a discipleship house, the harder it is to find those common meals and times to meet. But I think the most important is that people understand the concept and commitment. But I can't go into a teaching here, but I think people don't understand family and fellowship. And I think that's one of the hardest problem, or the biggest problems we see, is that people want to be part of a fellowship, want to be discipled, but they always want to do what they want to do when they want to do it. And then you're not a family. Then you're not a real fellowship. Then you're just a bunch of individuals running your own life. And it's hard for the younger generation to get that.
Yeah. Okay, we're kind of coming towards the last few minutes. Maybe Laurence, if you got one more question, and then I can finish with a.
Yeah.
Oh, you can also do the prayer bit at the end as well.
Okay. Maybe, I don't know, because the fact to think out of the box and to start new things, it's always a risking taking place. And do you have one testimony where you had to take a really huge step of faith and that you would like to share with us?
I think maybe the hardest thing wasn't with YWAM, but I think it was with trying to get this unity movement in Oslo, which is called Move Oslo now. I was just randomly, and probably it was God, that I got involved, and I was asked to be an ambassador from Scandinavia in this movement there, this huge international network. And I was like, God, I've just started ministry in Oslo. There's other people who would be better, but I joined. I was part of planning a big conference in New York, and my role was to get, a bunch of Norwegians, especially people from Oslo, to join me. And in the beginning, some of my pastor friends are very skeptical. Is this a YWAM thing? No, it isn't. And I just felt depressed the whole time. And I was like waiting for some of the key pastors and leaders to join before I really got things going. And I was sitting, really felt down in my office in July. And we were supposed to be in New York in October, and no one really had signed up, and I hadn't gotten people with me. And I was like complaining to God, and he said, Joakim, I called you because I wanted you, step up, take leadership. Don't sit there and wait for that other people you think you need, or, you just need to go. And right at that time, another friend of mine, a little older, he was at the office, and he came in and says, Joakim, what are you up to? He says, actually, I'm a little depressed. I think this is so hard, and blah, 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 blah. And so he's just like, no, we need to do this. This is important for the city. And we both had this idea that we should sponsor another pastor for the New York trip. And so we did. And that day I just said, committed for myself, like, I'm going to go to New York. I'm going to just say, this is what we're going to do. Join me if you want to do. I'm not going to wait for the right persons to be on board first. And that day we got the main pastors in Oslo with us. Through sponsoring their trips, some of them, but then after that, the ball kept rolling, and we had 12 of the most influential people in Oslo in the church with us. But it started with me, like I was afraid of being that front runner and take that leadership because I felt like I wasn't the right person. I've only been in ministry 3 years. There's been people there who've been there for 20 years and had bigger ministry than I had, and so I learned a lesson, like if God's called you and he's appointed you, you just need to step out. And when you do that in faith, then it's his job to get people with me. So that was a lesson learned from I was a little bit a coward. So I needed to be a bit more bold.
Awesome.
That's great. That's great. The other question, Joakim, we ask every month is just about what books you're reading, or maybe even in the last few years, significant books that have really impacted you, or resources in any way.
Yeah, I like to read a lot of books. It's, I think, there's many books. I recommend lots of books about who was Jesus in a Jewish context. That's a lot of my been the journey the last 8-10 years to me, is to figure out what was discipleship really about, how did it work. So I read up a lot on books on Jesus' time, and I could mention many, but I think lately a book that really impacted me, I don't even know if I remember the title correctly, but I feel God the last year has challenged me to be a father. I have 4 kids, that's the most important, but also a father in the leading as a father. And so I'm on a journey now, finding out what does it mean to be a father at home. You know a little bit about it, but more, what's how can I do that in a godly way? Because there's not really a lot in the Bible about fatherhood or directly. And then how can I do that at work? How can I be more of leading as a father? And a book that I really enjoyed is actually a story about the prodigal son by Bailey, a theologian. He says, in his book about how Jesus retold the story of Israel through the prodigal son, and it's basically the story of Isaac and Esau and Jacob again. And in that, there's quite a bit about the fatherhood and being a father. And so that book really gave me a lot of insight, both into Jewish thinking and Middle Eastern thinking, but also about fatherhood. And so I highly recommend that book, even if there's a couple of things I might disagree with theologically. But it was an eye opening. Many things there.
Thank you. Thank you. It's been really good for us to hear your heart and to hear everything that is going on in YM Oslo and your city. It stimulates our minds to think out of the box and to dare doing new things. So thank you so much for your time, Joakim. I can see you love your city, and maybe you could share some prayer subject. How can we pray for you as a family, as a team, as a city? Do you have any subject requests?
Yeah, it's good. As a family, we're in a transition. I'm actually now back where I grew up, because that's a long story too. I don't have time, but we really prayed the last 2 years for a house in Oslo. And I never looked more, prayed more. I feel like half of Norway was part of praying and helping us and fundraising and everything. And all the doors closed. It was incredible to see how nothing worked out. And I had to pull the brake in the middle of the summer and just move back to where I grew up, which is an hour a bit outside Oslo. And so now we're in the middle of, okay, God, how did we end up here? It's hard to lead two organization in Oslo, which is extremely focused on changing the city and living on the countryside. Yeah. But I've seen God blessing in it. But basically, we're in a situation as a family now to really figure out the future. How will that look? So that's personally for us as a family. And then I think from the work, it's when you don't have a base like we have in Oslo, then COVID-19 has maybe been even harder, because we don't have that. We don't have those meeting points anymore, only on Zoom, and it's not allowed the last months to even meet or do any activity in Oslo. So I'm a little bit, it's shaking everything we have, because when you're doing a movement where everyone is just partly involved, we have no full-time staff. They're from 20% to 80, 90, so they're always doing something else on the side. The motivation to keep going and everything. So I'm a little bit curious to see how it will look when we're more back to normal, to pray for God to send more people who want to be involved, but really help people through this hard time to stay connected. And for the movement of Oslo, it's just to continue unity. And I think it keeps growing in ownership, this movement, Move Oslo, but we still have a long way to go, and especially be able to do practically action that actually we could see a change in Oslo, not just talk about it, but to see more fruit.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe I can pray for you now, and everybody who's online with us, if you can join us and pray for Joakim and YM Oslo. God, we want to thank you for Joakim and his family and all the step of faith that they have been taken until now, and how they've been obedient to your word and daring new things and connecting with different people. And I just want to pray for their family, that you keep them safe and you keep them in your hands, and that they will receive a clear understanding of what the next steps are for them. I pray for faith and for a renewed spirit, so they can discern the time they are in as a family and as a team. And we just want to bless Oslo. We want to bless this city, that many will encounter you, God. And I pray that you will be glorified into this city. I pray for everybody who's part of the discipleship houses and Move Oslo. And I pray that there will be even more fruits, and that you will grow your kingdom, God, and give more strategies to the churches and to the different leaders there. And we want to thank you for this unity they have already. And I just want to pray that the enemy don't take away this unity, and that they will be growing together in unity and have more authority in the city to spread your word. So in the name of Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you, Joakim. It was great having you here, Laurence.
Thank you.
Next month, Tova is going to be leading the lounge, and I think Johan is from Harpenden is joining her. Maybe I can just throw one thing out to anyone listening as we finish. Is just an event that we're going to hopefully run 4 times a year as part of the learning community, and it's called Future Wise. And it's going to be a 2-hour leadership summit. The first one will be the 22nd of February. So wherever you're listening to this, get your diaries out and put it in. It's be 1:30 in the UK time start. That's 2:30 Central European time, and then etc. after that. So join us. We'll have a couple of really good speakers focused on the future and what the future can look like for us as YWAM and as leaders. And then there'll be a panel discussion. It'll be a real, I think, very stimulating time. And so I want to encourage you to join us on that day. FutureWise, the 22nd of February. We'll send out links, and there'll be notifications on this Facebook page that you're watching this. So anyway, but I just want to say thank you again, Joakim. You're doing really good work, and I hope some of what you're doing can, as Laurence said, stimulate new growth like this all over Europe. New things and new ways. It sounds brilliant. So thanks so much. Yeah. Okay. See you later, everyone.